Hello, welcome. Thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Michelle Freeman. This video is all about 4 really simple ways that you can stretch out your psoas muscle, or in other words, your hip flexors. And I want to also share with you just some insights on where this muscle is, how to sense into it, because it is actually a tricky muscle for people to sort of feel some awareness in this area, and also why it's really important. So if that sounds good for you, stick along. We're going to dive right in. So firstly, where is our psoas muscle? You might not actually have heard of it before. It's a muscle that is one of our hip flexors, and it's probably one of the main hip flexors, really. And where it's located in our body is it connects to the top of our thigh bone on a little bony protrusion on the inside of the thigh bone that's called the lesser trochanter. That's not super important to remember, but in essence, it's connecting kind of inside of this thigh bone here. And then both sides, so it connects to both legs, obviously, and it's traveling up through the inside of our pelvis, and then it connects up into what's called the transverse processes of our spine all along the lower back. So all the way from lower spine 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it also connects up into the diaphragm. So the transverse processes are just the little bones that stick out on the sides of the spine. Now, why that's important to know is that it's a really important muscle for your movements. You use it every single day, and if you do spend a fair amount of time sitting in a chair, which a lot of us do these days, it's very likely that your psoas muscle is tight and possibly also a little bit weak and hard to connect to. So these exercises I'm going to give you today will really help you to connect with it, to feel it, but also to learn how to stretch it really effectively, to lengthen it. Because if you don't do that kind of stuff and it just gets short and tight, it's going to be a problem for you in a lot of different ways, because it can affect just your movement patterns and how you feel in your body in general. Okay, so let's get into how we can feel it. Like, where is this psoas muscle? It's actually really deep inside of our bodies. So you can try this at home with me if you'd like to. We're just going to do a little activation exercise. Really simple one. So you'll just lie down on your back with your knees bent and your feet about hip width apart. And then what we're going to do is just use our fingertips to feel into the area where the psoas muscle is. Now, we're not actually going to feel it literally, because it is really deep inside the belly and you'd have to push quite hard to feel it. But we're just going to place our fingertips around where the psoas muscle lives, and then we'll do a little activation muscularly to sort of let the psoas muscle tone and activate up into our fingertips. Okay, so what I want you to do is just place your fingers on your belly and find where your belly button is, where your navel is. And then you're just going to go a couple inches outside of that area, and then just kind of lightly press your fingertips into your belly. Just nice and gentle. It shouldn't be painful or anything like that. And just kind of feeling into that area. So this is around the area where the psoas muscle lives. And then we're going to keep our fingers just pressing in, so keep some constant pressure there. And then what I want you to think about doing is moving your knees towards your head or towards your chest, but without actually lifting the leg up. So you're just going to do the activation. So just imagining moving your knees towards your head. So if you're watching me in the video, you're not going to see a lot going on because it's all happening internally, but you should feel right away some musculature lift up into your fingertips. And those are your abdominal muscles that will switch on when you activate your psoas muscle. So we'll try that again. So just pressing the fingertips down into the belly, and then drawing the knees up towards the head. Another way you could think of that is dragging your heels energetically towards your bottom. That will do the same sort of thing. So hopefully you felt that, just that little activation of those muscles lifting up into your fingertips. And that's exactly the type of thing the psoas muscle does for us. Every time we take a step, every time we lift our knee up towards our chest, even when you bend forward to tie your shoes or put your pants on, all those things, your psoas muscle is facilitating that. It's helping with those movements. So that's why it's such an important muscle for us. The experts of the psoas muscle also say that it's a very emotional muscle, meaning that when we're in fear, when we're in anxiety, when we're in fight or flight, this is a muscle that tends to go into sort of a lockdown mode. possibly because it is so close to our diaphragm, so it's really linked into our breath. It's also very close into a lot of really important internal organs, right? Our reproductive, some of our digestive organs are all in this area, and so maybe it's a protection mechanism. So that's another reason why your psoas muscle might be kind of switched on all the time and why it'll be good to stretch it out. So let's dive into our exercises. Again, we're going to do 4 exercises today for the psoas muscle, and the first one, probably the simplest one, is just to come into a lunging position. So here's what we'll do. You do want to have a bit of a padded surface, so whether you're on a carpet or I'm on a yoga mat, whatever you can do just to cushion your knees will make this more comfortable for you. And then from this position of standing on the knees, we're just going to step our right foot forward. And as you step your right foot forward, you want to step it pretty far forward the way I have here, rather than stepping it here. Make sure it's a really long stance, because now what we're going to do is start to bend that knee a little bit more and allow the hips to drop down and forward. We want to set it up so our knee is just directly above our ankle and our hips start to move forward so they are forward of the back knee. So you can see that here in what I'm doing. From there, we can just rest the hands on the front knee, and you're just going to start to let your hips drop down with the help of gravity, and you should start to feel a stretch through the hip flexors of that back leg, which will include your psoas muscle. And the more you sort of scoop your tailbone under and lift your heart, the more it's going to get into that area. Now, if you want a little more, you can deepen this by dropping down onto the fingertips, but do be mindful not to just collapse your chest there, or you'll probably miss the psoas muscle. You want to keep lifting the chest. So you're really thinking about lengthening the line of that back leg. All right, that's the idea. We're going to go ahead and just switch sides. So I would suggest that when you do this, you spend at least 10 to 15 breaths, really get in there, really spend some time feeling into it. So this is the target area here, working into the front of the hip. And again, I'm going to really try and keep my heart lifted. I'm thinking about scooping my tailbone under a little bit, just to help deepen into the psoas area. Now, if that one is a little bit tricky for you, because actually bringing your hands to the floor like that might not be accessible for everybody, there's another way you can do this, and it's a little bit easier, and it's actually a great thing to do if you're at the office, or if you just don't want to get right down on the floor, if you want to be a little more supported. So what you'll need for this one is a chair, and you could use really any kind of chair. I've got one here. I'm just going to bring it onto my mat. And what you want to do is position yourself in relationship to the chair. So the seat of the chair is in front of you, and you're a little bit off to the side, because then we're going to step our foot forward again. So this is exactly the same posture. I'm going to step forward, allow my hips to move down and forward, and now I have this nice place to rest my forearms just on the edge or the seat of the chair, and you can really try and just let yourself go here and start to get into that psoas. So we'll go ahead and do the other side just so you can see what's going on. And let this also be more of an experiment of feeling into your body in terms of how you position yourself. So you might find that you want to have your foot a little bit more in or a little bit more out. The only alignment thing I would suggest is that you try and keep your hips pretty square to the front, so you resist that feeling of letting your right hip roll out here. You're going to roll it back in. Okay, and we just keep working into that hip. So again, just spending 10 to 15 breaths, or even longer if it feels good for you. So that's number 2. Okay, number 3, we're actually going to use a wall for this next one. And this is probably the most powerful, most effective psoas and hip flexor opener. It's also possible to use a lounge or a sofa or something like that. You can use the side of a lounge if you didn't have a wall handy. And the other thing I want to say about this is that it can put pressure on your knees, whatever knee is going to stay on the ground. I'll show you in a second. So you're going to want to either be on carpet, or like I have here, I just have a folded up blanket. You could use a towel, whatever you have around. And that's just to provide some support for the knee. So the way we get into this one is we're going to come in front of our wall if we're using the wall or the chair, and we just come a couple feet away from the wall and just fold gently. So nice and easy. I've got my knees soft. I just let my head drop down, relax my spine, and then to position into the pose, I'll come up onto the fingertips. and just lift the chest up a bit. And then I'll step my left foot, my left shin, I should say, up the wall. And I'm just going to work on sliding that down the wall until I find the floor. Okay, from that position, I want to have roughly a 90 angle at this front knee. I'll go ahead and sit up, and I want to have my foot that's against the wall position a little bit outside my bottom, so that ideally I can sort of sink my bottom back to the wall and try and get it to touch the wall. And this is going to start to really stretch out the front of your thigh. And you can add to this also by bringing your back right up against the wall, and then thinking about tucking the tailbone underneath and really stretching out that quad. You can have your hands resting on your front knee, or if you had something like I have here at the studio, I have ropes here on the wall. Not that you would have that, but maybe you have something else that you can reach up and hold onto. That can be a nice little extra tractioning for your upper spine. So just hanging out there for a few breaths. Then to come out of it, I just come back again, fingertips on the floor. I'm gonna make sure to tuck the toes that are against the wall first, and then I press into the foot on the floor and the toes against the wall, and I'm just gonna come back to that original position. Go ahead and do the other side just so that you can see what's really going on with that foot against the wall. And I should say also that this pose, it's probably not the most comfortable thing for people straight away, but it is very effective. So stay with it. The more you do it, the more it's going to open everything up. So again, I'm just going to make sure my foot's a little bit to the outside of my hip, and then I'm just going to work myself back against the wall. And to make it a little deeper, I'll tuck my tailbone, and you're really trying to get your back nice and flat against the wall. Just taking a few breaths. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and come out the same way, just tucking the toes that are against the wall, pushing into it, and I can release down. Okay, so that's the third one. Now, the last one is a pretty easy one to do at home, and depending on your current flexibility in this front part of your leg or the hip flexor area will dictate how far you go into this one. I would suggest that you grab some pillows off your couch. I happen to have a bolster here at my yoga studio. If you had a yoga bolster, that would be the perfect thing to use. Whatever you have, could be some rolled up blankets or towels as well, but this just gives me a little bit of height so that when I go back, it's not such a dramatic stretch for my hip flexors. And we're going to do this one leg at a time. So I'll just sit on the ground right in front of whatever my support's going to be, and then fold one leg back. Now, doing one leg at a time, it's a little bit easier. When you get better at this, you can just fold both legs back and do them both at the same time. I'm going to try and bring my knees fairly close together and drop my right hip, which is the bent knee hip, a little bit down, which is going to help to target that area at the front of the leg. And then I just slowly start to ease myself back onto that support. Now, a couple things about this, because this won't work for everybody. So if you feel like it's pretty extreme to go back, you could just be sitting up, right? It might be totally enough for you just to be here. You could put some blankets on the top of the bolster so that when you go back, your head is a little bit more supported, which will also take some of the edge off of this posture. Or if you need a little bit more, like the way I would normally practice this pose is I would just go all the way back without any support, and then go ahead and just reach the arms overhead. Sorry, just moving the microphone a bit. So just going ahead and bringing the arms overhead and stretching out through that whole front line of the body. Okay. And then you would go ahead and do the other side. So hopefully those tips are helpful for you guys, and one, if not all of those postures do help to bring a little more awareness into this area and that you pay a little more attention to it. And also just keep in mind that it's just a little bit like brushing your teeth, a daily routine, or say every other day, but something that you do really regularly and consistently just to connect with yourself and get into your body to help open it up in ways that are really useful for it. So let me know how you go, guys, in the comments down below. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in hearing more from me and getting more videos from me. And I'd love to hear how you go. Okay, have an awesome day, everyone. Namaste.